This is right in your wheelhouse, Mr. Chairman. What's been happening with the border? Just a little bit ago, there was the case that took place in Houston, Texas. This girl, a 12-year-old girl, who was brutally murdered by these two illegal migrants. We are hearing of all of these migrant crimes. This mother was pleading, saying, throw the book at these guys. And the DA says if there's ever a case that epitomizes what happens with an open border, it's the heinousness and brutality of this. How concerned should we be, Mr. Chairman, about the open border?
Well, obviously, you hear stories like this that are just heartbreaking, and you know that they're completely avoidable if we would just enforce the border and make certain that we have controls in place. The types of controls that obviously President Trump had in place. The concern really is, and when we're hearing it all over, that you've got the FBI director openly saying that we've got the highest level of terrorist threat since 9/11, and as he's going, up to Capitol Hill and making it clear that he sees those threats. He's laying out what really is the natural result of the southern border being open. No matter how good law enforcement is, if you let people in who intend to do us harm, and as Director Ray has said, we have people in this country who have come across the southern border who have affiliated ties with ISIS and Al-Qaeda and are in communications with ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and it is their intention to do harm to Americans.
Yeah. By the way, I understand we have John Catsimatidis joining us remotely. John, your thoughts about what we're talking about with this open border?
Well, that's one of the biggest problems we have in our country right now, not controlling who's coming and going. I believe in immigration. I'm an immigrant. I want immigration. But we have to know, just like Ellis Island, we have to know who's coming and going, and we have to make sure they don't bringing in criminals. They're not bringing in people that are going to hurt the American people. They're not going to bring in kids that have diseases. They're going to sit next to our kids. In other words, we need another Ellis Island. It has to go through checks and balances, and that's all I'm saying. And the right thing. And again, they have to wait their turn a little bit. They just can't just flood the borders. You can't ask everybody in Africa, everybody in Central America, come on in. I mean, it doesn't work. Yeah. That's my comment.
Yeah. By the way, John, I agree with you. Judge Weinberg, I will say one thing, and I rarely say this because I have been very disappointed with a lot of these judges of late who've been soft on a lot of the revolving door that we've seen of justice. This judge in Texas just a little bit ago imposed a $10 million bail. Thank goodness. That's a very high bail. It was higher than even what the prosecutors wanted. So bravo to the judge. But these guys were clearly a flight risk. And one of them, the guy, I believe it was in court today, had an ankle bracelet on. He crossed the border 3 weeks ago. They arrested him. They put an ankle bracelet on, and they're accusing him of committing the murder while he had the ankle bracelet on.
The dirty little secret, Rita and John, is that ankle bracelets don't work.
You think?
They do not work. You don't have to be a genius to figure it out. They can be cut off, and you also need somebody monitoring it at all times to see where they are. But the real question I have, and I don't know the state law of Texas, I know New York law, something like this, I wouldn't have said bail at all. I would just remanded without bail. I wouldn't even let some extreme group could come up with some money, an apology group, try to chase up bail, because you only have to have about 10 or 15% to make the bail bond anyway. So I never would have said bail. I would have remanded. No bail, just keep them in during the trial.
Peter King, your thoughts?
I think to me the overriding concern here is the whole terrorist threat. We've seen here in New York what can happen. If you can get 2 or 3 trained terrorists, they can bring the city to ruins. If we're talking about thousands coming across the border, we are really at risk. And that's Mike and I on the Intelligence Committee is doing all they can. I'm not a great fan of the FBI director, but I agree with him on this one. I think this is worse than September 10th.
Wow. Chairman Mike Turner, your thoughts. Do you agree that this is worse than September 10th, that the threat level is that high?
Well, certainly we can't speculate as to the scale of what an attack may be. But when you have the FBI director openly, publicly warning that the threat level is highest since it was in September 11th, and that it's a result of people coming across the southern border, and that they're in touch with terrorist groups and organizations. That means this is organized, this is funded, these people are trained. This is not a lone wolf, someone who just has nefarious intent. it certainly shows that as a direct result of the Biden administration's policies of this open border, we have people here who are inside the United States who intend to do us harm, and law enforcement is working diligently to try to find those people and bring them off the streets. But at the same time, the numbers are just so extraordinary that the risk is great.
Yeah, and also Pete was just talking about the threat level of also terrorist attack. We had those guys, the 8 ones from Tajikistan, just recently come in, and we still don't really know the fate of what happened to them, how they got in the country. So it's not just obviously potentially this guy, who obviously I wouldn't believe this is his first attack if you do this to a 12-year-old precious girl. But you've got these guys who are coming from these countries that we're clearly at odds with. I mean, you've Iranians, we have Chinese. What do you think about the fact, Mr. Chairman, that there's been, it's like 30,000 Chinese who've crossed our border? And that's a staggering number.
But this is really the tragedy of the Biden administration's policies and really the fallacy of the policies. They're letting people in when they say they don't have any intelligence, that they have, what they call derogatory information about the individuals coming across. We don't have perfect intelligence. We don't have intelligence on everyone in the world. But when someone comes from an area that is at risk, where there's activities that place us at risk, and they present themselves at our border, there's no explanation as to how they got there. You can pretty much assume that they had assistance and help, and it's not assistance and help because they just want freedom and a better life. These people are coming here with an intention that as the director of the FBI has said, it intends to do us harm and places us at risk.
Yeah, and also, look, we've got Israel Hamas, too, at this same time. I mean, this is such a cauldron. And you think about even what's going on with Russia, Ukraine. There are so many threats out there. How do you keep track of them, Mr. Chairman? I mean, it's just so many of them.
It's an easy job.
Yeah. I was going to say, how do you sleep? Because there's so many from so many different directions.
Well, the frustrating aspect really is that, again, the failure of the Biden administration's policies. When you look at Ukraine, even the Secretary General of NATO has come up against some of the Biden policies, the restrictions that have been placed upon Ukraine. The Secretary General of NATO has described it as having Ukraine fight with one arm tied behind their back. Well, you can't win. I mean, this is how you get a forever war, by giving them so many restrictions that they cannot win. They're beginning slowly, as a result of public pressure and international pressure, to relieve some of those, which hopefully can give the edge back to Ukraine. If you put Russians and Ukrainians at a front line fighting each other with equal firepower, the Ukrainians are going to win. But if you give them restrictions, if you don't give them the weapons that they need, then we're going to have this conflict continue with the risk that Ukraine could lose. And of course, Vladimir Putin's not going to stop there.
What about Israel, too? Because it came out again that they say they're not getting all the weapons that they were promised. And then we heard the back and forth with the Biden administration. I mean, the way Schumer scolded Netanyahu.
Right, and it really is back and forth. I mean, the thing that's so crazy about this is it's as if they have buyer's remorse whenever they pick a side. Here we're for Israel, we're against Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist organization. It is a franchise of Iran. They're not a standalone organization. They're like Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis are all just franchise part of the structure of Iran. And the Biden administration continues to not give a full support to full support to Israel, with the ability for them to do the job that they need to take down Hamas.
Ed Cox, your thoughts?
Yeah, Chairman, I don't understand why the Biden administration didn't let the Ukrainians use everything that they could be trained on and use right from the start. If they had done that, I think they would have defeated Putin, and it would have changed perhaps a geopolitical change in the world, because he would have been out and Russia would gravitate probably to the West. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. Remember, the Russians were on the run. They came in almost making it to Kyiv, and then the Ukrainians pushed them out. If we had given them the weapons that they needed at the time, they would have been able to continue to push Russia out. The problem is with the long-range weapons is that Russia is able to stand off. They're able to go farther out than the Ukrainians were able to hit them and hit the front line. Giving them longer range weapons, giving the ability to hit into Russia where Russia's firing from, makes a difference to the outcome here.